They called him just another broke old man, until the CEO walked in and cried, "Dad." Sometimes the richest man in the room doesn't recognize wealth until he sees the face he forgot. This is not just a story about money, power, or fame. It's about a man who swept the floors in silence. And the moment his son, a billionaire, called him Dad in front of the world. You're watching real father stories where true sacrifices come to light. He arrived at 9:00 a.m. sharp, just like he used to when the building was still a printing warehouse. The new front desk was made of marble, now sleek and cold. The glass doors were automatic. The people inside wore tailored suits and used words like exit strategy and valuation. But he still held the box with both hands like it was treasure. No one looked up. Not really. The receptionist glanced at him, old hat shoes, dusty collar frayed, then turned back to her screen. A younger man in security whispered, "He probably thinks this is the post office." But the old man wasn't confused. He walked to the desk, cleared his throat gently, and placed the box down. "This is for Mr. Ellis," he said, voice firm but soft. "Tell him it's from Charles." "Mr. Ellis doesn't take unscheduled visits," the receptionist replied, her voice flat. "Especially not from, walk-ins. I won't stay, just wanted to leave this." Charles smiled kindly, gesturing to the box. The security guard chuckled. "Is that banana bread?" Charles didn't answer. He turned around and started to leave. That's when the elevator dinged. A hush fell over the lobby. Everyone knew who was stepping out. Tyler Ellis, CEO of Ellis Corp., the man Forbes called the billionaire without a past. Sharp jaw, sharper mind. 38, self-made, ruthless. He stepped out flanked by two assistants. His phone was in one hand, his voice loud measured, until he saw the back of a hat, until he saw him. His phone dropped. "Wait, wait," he shouted. Everyone turned. Tyler walked past the guards, past the marble, past the silence. He reached the old man and stared. "Why is my father standing outside like a stranger?" It wasn't supposed to be a big day, just a short visit. The old man stood near the marble reception desk of Linford Industries, a towering glass giant nestled in the heart of downtown Chicago. He wore his best jacket, one he'd kept folded in a plastic bag for years. It was outdated, the color faded, a few seams tugging apart, but it was clean and, to him, respectful. Clutched in his hand was a small square gift wrapped in cheap gold paper. Inside, a wooden photo frame. He had carved it himself from the remains of a tree behind the boarding house he lived in. The photo he placed inside had yellowed from time, but it meant everything. It was of a boy no older than 8, holding a toy truck and smiling with a gap in his teeth. That boy was his son. "Excuse me, sir, are you lost?" the young receptionist asked, eyes glued to his frayed shoes. She didn't smile. "No, miss. I'm just here to leave this for Mr. Linford." "Nathan Linford," the old man replied, his voice a quiet tremble. The receptionist paused, nearly scoffing. "You mean the CEO?" She glanced at the gift in his hand. "Do you have an appointment?" He shook his head. No. Just wanted to give him something." Behind her, a young intern chuckled as he passed by. "Who let Grandpa in?" he muttered under his breath, loud enough for others to hear. One security guard seated a few feet away crossed his arms and smirked. "Hey, Pops," he said. "This isn't the food bank. You sure you got the right place?" The old man didn't react. He simply stood there, head slightly bowed, fingers tightening around the gift, as if it might disappear. Every minute he stood still, felt like a trial, as if kindness had to be earned through humiliation. A few more minutes passed. He tried again. "Could you please give this to him? I won't take any more time. I just thought he might want it." The receptionist exhaled. "Look, sir, Mr. Linford is extremely busy. You can't just walk in and—" But then the glass doors behind her slid open with a whisper, and the air changed. Nathan Linford, the man himself, young, sharp, towering in an impeccably tailored navy suit, walked through with his executive assistant trailing closely behind. Phones pinged. Staff stood straighter. Even the receptionist quickly adjusted her posture, flipping her hair back into place. Nathan's eyes scanned the room instinctively. Then they froze. The old man, still standing still, holding the gift, looked up. For a moment, neither moved. Then Nathan's voice, usually crisp and commanding, cracked like thin glass. "Why is my father standing out here like a stranger?" The room didn't move. Not a whisper, not a blink. The billionaire had spoken, and no one knew how to process the words. "Dad," Nathan repeated louder this time, stepping forward. His voice cracked with something unfamiliar, urgency and disbelief. The security guard instantly stood up, unsure whether to salute or disappear. The receptionist's hands trembled as she tried to slide the small gold-wrapped box closer to the edge of her desk. She suddenly realized she had just scolded a man the CEO called father. Nathan's assistant leaned in. "Sir, is that really—" He didn't answer. Nathan was already walking. Not with the calm, measured gait of a tech mogul, but with the shaky speed of a boy recognizing someone he'd forgotten in a dream. He stopped inches away from the old man. "Dad, is it really you?" The old man smiled, shy, as if embarrassed to be seen. "You look sharp, son. Just wanted to drop off something for your birthday. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Nathan reached for the package, but stopped midair, overcome with emotion. He looked his father up and down, saw the same shoes from 2 decades ago, the calloused hands, the weathered cheeks. And then his eyes fell on the carving. "I made it myself," the old man whispered. "From that oak tree behind the place. Remember when we carved our initials there? Yours is still visible." Nathan didn't answer. His face was red, his jaw clenched. And then the most powerful man in the room slowly dropped his briefcase. With both hands, he pulled his father into a trembling embrace. "I thought you were gone," Nathan said, voice muffled. "I searched, but they said you disappeared." The room, once frozen with judgment, was now melting in shame. Phones were no longer recording. Heads were turning away. Some even wiped tears. One intern, the same one who had mocked the old man, slowly removed his lanyard and stepped back. Because in that moment, no one could pretend to be important. Not in the presence of sacrifice. Not when a forgotten man had returned not to ask for anything, but to give. They sat in Nathan's private office silent. The room was glass-walled, overlooking the skyline Nathan had conquered. But in that moment, it felt like a cage, and the old man with his scuffed shoes and trembling fingers looked out of place against the marble floor and LED screens. Nathan finally broke the silence. "Why didn't you ever come find me?" His voice was calm, but there was something boiling underneath. The old man looked down. "Son, I tried. I wrote. I called. I even showed up once at your college, but there was always someone at the gate, someone saying I wasn't on the list." Nathan blinked. "But why didn't you push harder, fight?" "I did," the old man said softly, "until I ran out of money. And then I ran out of dignity. He paused, then added, I didn't want to embarrass you. Nathan turned away ashamed. For years he believed his father had abandoned him, walked away from responsibility. His mother had remarried, moved them across the country, changed their last name. And whenever Nathan asked, she simply said, Your real dad didn't want us. But now, sitting inches from him, was a man who had wanted nothing but him. I worked nights, the old man continued, saved up whatever I could. Every birthday I carved you something, kept it in a box. Thought, maybe one day I'd get to give them all to you. He reached into the paper bag. Inside were several wooden figurines, each one slightly different, but all showing a father and son holding hands. One of them even had Nathan's face carved into it, copied from a newspaper clipping. Nathan's eyes welled up. Why did no one tell me? He asked almost to himself. The old man didn't answer that. He didn't need to, because sometimes the truth is not hidden. It's simply unwelcome. And in Nathan's world of suits and stock prices, there had been no room for a man who smelled of sawdust and wore the same coat for 20 years. But that room was now changing, and so was Nathan. The next day, Nathan didn't go to his usual breakfast meeting. Instead, he sat at his desk staring at a folder marked Personnel Records 1998-2003. He had called in his most trusted assistant, Leah, and simply said, I want everything about admissions, campus visits, and outside correspondence from the year I started college. Every gate record, every visitor log, every rejection note. Leah had raised an eyebrow but didn't question him. Now flipping through the yellowed pages, Nathan's hands started to tremble. There it was, a visitor slip dated September 19th, 1999. Name, Henry Whitaker. Reason for visit, to see my son, Nathan Whitaker. Status, denied, not on list. And then again, October 3rd, November 11th, December 22. 4 times in one semester. 4 times his father had stood at the gates only to be turned away. There were notes scribbled beside each one. Security advised subject claims to be father. Per directive from Mrs. Green, visitor not permitted access. Escort away from student residence. Nathan's blood froze at the last name Mrs. Green. That was his mother's new married name. He leaned back, eyes closed. It wasn't that his father didn't try. It was that someone made sure he never got through. He picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in years. When his mother answered, cheerful. As always, Nathan didn't waste time. Did you block my father from seeing me? Silence. Then, Nathan, you have to understand. He wasn't stable. He didn't have money. I couldn't let you grow up around someone like that. He was my father. Nathan's voice cracked. He was a janitor, Nathan, a nobody. The words hit him like a slap. And for the first time in his adult life, he hung up on his mother. Because he realized something. Being raised in privilege had cost him the greatest privilege of all, knowing the man who had never stopped loving him. The next morning, the press gathered in the marble lobby of Whitaker Holdings. They were expecting a routine shareholder update. Instead, the company's billionaire CEO stepped up to the podium and did something no one saw coming. He didn't wear his usual Armani suit. No gold tie clip, no polished shoes, just a plain navy sweater and jeans. His voice was calm, steady, but what he said turned heads across the globe. I want to introduce someone, he began. You may know me as Nathan Whitaker, the tech investor, the startup king, the Forbes cover. But I want to tell you who I am because of. A murmur ran through the crowd As an older man stepped out from the side entrance, his janitor uniform crisp, his eyes cautious. It was Henry Whitaker. Nathan turned to him, then back to the audience. "This is my father, the man who sold his blood so I could attend college, who tried 4 times to visit me at school and was denied every time. The man who cleaned the very halls where I was winning awards while I never knew he stood outside the glass." Silence. Flashes from cameras, but no one said a word. Today I'm not here to announce a product. I'm here to correct a story. Because for 20 years, the world thought I built this alone. But everything I am comes from a man who worked in silence. He turned to Henry. "Dad, you don't clean this building anymore. Starting today, you own part of it." Gasps. Reporters stood up. Nathan lifted a document and ownership deed. He had transferred 5% of Whitaker Holdings into Henry's name. That's $180 million at current valuation. Henry didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just stood there, shaking. And then slowly he pulled out something from his pocket. A crumpled piece of notebook paper. Unfolded it, read, "Nathan, I'm proud of you, even if you never see this." He had written it 20 years ago. Now his son was reading it aloud in front of the world. News of the emotional press conference exploded within hours. CEO gives a $180 million stake to janitor dad blazed across headlines. TikTok clips went viral. Reddit threads dissected every frame of Henry's expression. Talk shows debated it. Was this humility or a long overdue redemption? But the story didn't stop at sympathy. It sparked a wave of corporate soul-searching. Employees from Fortune 500 companies began sharing their own invisible parent stories. Executives posted tributes to the mothers who cleaned offices, the fathers who worked night shifts, the grandparents who sold vegetables to send them to school. Nathan and Henry were suddenly symbols, not of wealth but of unseen sacrifice. Journalists requested interviews with Henry, but he declined all. He didn't want fame. Instead, he quietly founded a scholarship fund in his late wife's name. Martha's Table, it was called. Its mission support children of janitorial, custodial, and service workers. When a reporter finally caught up to Henry outside a modest diner, they asked, "Do you feel proud now that the world knows your story?" Henry didn't pause. "I was always proud, even when I was ignored. Even when I stood outside glass doors. But now, my son finally saw me. That's all a father ever wants." The clip aired on every major network. But it was one viral comment that captured the spirit of the moment. He mopped floors so his son could walk into boardrooms. Now his son opens the door and says, "Come in, Dad." This was the moment where Henry stopped being a janitor, not because of money, but because the world finally saw the dignity he carried all along. Ready for the emotional close. Weeks passed. The stock price surged. Investors were thrilled. But Nathan didn't care. He had a new obsession time. "I spent 3 decades chasing titles," he told his assistant, "and missed 30 Christmases with the only man who ever believed in me." He made changes, cut his work week in half, moved his father into the guest house, hired a chef who could recreate Martha's cornbread recipe. But most of all, he sat and listened. Every night, Nathan would leave the boardroom and walk down the garden path where Henry would be waiting with 2 mugs of tea. They didn't talk about money, or business, or guilt, just life. One evening, Henry pulled out an old photo. Torn edges, faded ink. It was a picture of a younger Nathan standing on his first day of school, missing a front tooth, but grinning ear to ear. "Your mom took that," Henry said, smiling. "She said, 'That boy's gonna own the world someday.'" Nathan looked at the picture, and for the first time, tears fell without shame. "I don't want to own the world," he whispered. "I just want to earn back my seat at your table." Henry reached across and gripped his hand. "You already did, son, the day you saw me." And just like that, a wound 30 years deep finally closed. No speeches, no headlines. Just a father and son, two men who'd spent their lives in different worlds, finally sitting in the same room as equals. Podcast Utro used for voiceover. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with nationalpresstoday.com. If this story moved you or opened your eyes, don't forget to leave a comment, and share this report with someone who needs to see it. This was real, and it matters. Real Father Stories.